today I'm going to start somewhere I usually don't start when I speak about these clinical structures, and this is with a psychoanalytic truism, some type of sentence we see Freud expressing in his paper called Negation from 1925. And you can find this quote, I'm paraphrasing, but Freud says that negation is the highway to the unconscious. So negation is, he says, negation is the hallmark of the unconscious. Sorry, the dream, I'm now confusing. Dreams are the highway to the unconscious. Negation is the hallmark of the unconscious. Freud says that in his paper on negation. And in order to understand what he means, we need to make a certain distinction between two German words. One is called Verneinung, which is negation. I can paste it in the chat if you'd like. Let's see. Do we have a chat? Yeah.
We should, yes.
So I'll paste the German words at least in the chat. And the other word is Verdrängung. This comes with these two tiny dots, the umlaut, the famous umlaut in German. And this is where A becomes an E, Verdrängung. The first is translated as negation, and the second is translated as repression. So we have to make a distinction between the two in order to understand what Freud meant. And let's go to an example that Freud gives in this paper in order to express his idea of negation. He speaks about a patient that recounts a certain dream. Freud is usually quite silent. He doesn't say a lot, and the person recounts the dream. He gets to a point where he speaks about this woman, and then all of a sudden, without provocation, one might say, he says to Freud, you might ask me who this person in the dream can be. It is not my mother. So he says, that's not my mother. Freud didn't say anything. You can say, well, I wasn't saying anything, but Freud is more attuned. He pays attention. And we see here, Freud says, some type of voluntary articulation in the form of a linguistic negation. Not my mother. It's not my mother. Freud reads that as something very important. Because for Freud, when one articulates a negation in such a voluntary way, in such an expressive way, resisting an idea, negating an idea presented in speech, Freud says we might look at this not only as a denial of the content provided in the sentence, here a particular person, but also an opposition to the possibility of its affirmation. So you see the difference here. So Freud identifies a certain opposition that the patient expressed unwittingly to the possibility that this might have been affirmed. Here he projects it to Freud. And here we might say, well, surely it might seem that this is not your mother, but why do you think you had to oppose it so strongly at this point? Huh? So we ponder upon this question. An opposition in regards to an affirmation of something, and in this case, something about the mother. Now, what Freud says here, and if you read the paper, I advise you read it carefully here. Because many people misread the following lines that Freud provides. Freud says that this type of opposition, this type of negation, is a sign that we might be dealing with repression. Something has been repressed. What Freud suggests to many analysts is that they pay attention to the way their analysts speak. And you see, it is not so much, and I'll emphasize this very soon, it is not so much that Freud gives us a certain party trick here, which you can use. It is fun in parties. You can ask someone, he tells a story, and you ask them, well, what was furthest from your mind at that moment? And they would say, oh, that. And of course, well, that is an interesting thing to be furthest from your mind. Or someone would say, negate something, and you say, oh, no, actually, this dream is about your mother. It is your mother. You're saying no. This means yes. This is not what Freud is saying. Although you can use it as a party trick, and I bestowed this party trick to you in this first session. But Freud is not satisfied with this. Because Freud does not suggest that we listen to the content of one's speech. And in this sense, even the signifier mother is not such a useful guide for us. We listen to the way one speaks, and I think Lacan calls it at some point to the way thought thinks. It means we pay attention to the way this person thinks and expresses this thought in speech. This type of process, the process of thinking expressed in speaking, is what provides psychoanalysts insights to one's psychic life. That's it. I've had a discussion yesterday with a friend, a good friend of mine who's a colleague as well, and we want to do a little debate and record it about countertransference and how it's used in the clinic. And I've come to oppose the use of countertransference belonging to the Lacanian orientation, and we were speaking about what does the analyst do? How does the analyst listen? The idea of countertransference and its use, the use of countertransference in analysis, there is transference, what Freud calls the motor force of psychoanalysis. It is something like a type of a love or an infatuation, one might say. It's important. Without it, there is no analysis. It is the foundation of the analytic situation. And then which manifests itself many times as the resource for the analyst to open up the unconscious, to have a certain engagement with unconscious material. On the other hand, countertransference is what the analyst sort of feels, thinks, detects according to their own perspective and ideas. And my friend was saying, look, sometimes I feel that the other person is anxious because they're not saying something. I feel it because I feel anxious. And when I feel that, I use it in my interpretations. I say, well, I feel there is anxiety in the room today. Is this something, can this have to do with the fact that you are not saying everything about such and such?